Republicans in Wisconsin's assembly took the first significant step on their plan to balance the state's budget, passing a measure early this morning that strips collective bargaining rights from most public workers. The vote ends 3 days of debate in the assembly, but the standoff over the bill and the protests against it are far from over. The bill goes to Wisconsin's Senate, but Democrats, who are in the minority, have fled to Illinois to prevent the vote, and no one knows exactly when they might return. Joining us now is Jim Gilmore. He is president and CEO of the Free Congress Foundation and former governor of the state of Virginia. Mr. Gilmore, great to see you this morning. Thank you so much for your time. As you know, the governor of Wisconsin is urging members of your party, other Republican governors, to follow suit. Do you think that this fear of contagion is actually going to manifest?
Well, I think that it's a universal problem that we're seeing across all the states of the United States, and in fact, most importantly, on the federal government itself. In the United States, we run our own budgets in the states. They have governors that have to set those budgets. They have state legislatures that have to pass them. And the fact is that for years and years and years, we spent too much money. Now we're in great deficit in each of the states. We're in great deficit because of pensions. We're in great deficits because of budgets. And you have to balance it. You just have to. And we've been overspending too long for too many years. And that is exactly what's going on at the federal level also in the United States of America. At the national level, at the end of the day, there's not enough money. And responsible governing means that you have to balance the budgets. And we've learned this from our friends in Europe. We've seen the examples in Greece and Ireland, and we're following that lead that adjustments simply have to be made.
Certainly there was too much spending. Perhaps you would even say there was too much spending when you were in office as well. But do you think this revolt that you rightly know we saw in Europe, in Greece, on the streets there, and we saw similar scenes in Wisconsin as well, will that spread to the likes of Ohio and Indiana and West Virginia and even further?
Well, there's no analogy between, for example, what's going on in the Middle East and that kind of uprising and what's going on in the United States. What's going on in the United States is unions getting their members together in order to protest, create a stir. I do think that these state legislators absenting their state and disappearing to prevent a vote is improper. That really undermines the whole system, and they need to go home and do their duty. But the protests that you're talking about are unions coming out and protesting. It's not a popular uprising. At the end of the day, no matter what happens, either we get into this whole issue of municipal and state bankruptcy, which I oppose completely, or you got to readjust the budgets. The governors in the United States are making an effort to readjust the budgets, and I think that's the proper thing that they really have to do.
No, and just to clarify, I wasn't likening it to the situation in the Middle East. I was talking more about Greece, and we saw public workers there. But moving forward, what can we do about this, sir? It seems to me that there are two options. One is a bailout. Another one is some sort of austerity or cutting, and that could manifest in a myriad of different ways, with bankruptcy, which is a topic that's being discussed, or with other sorts of spending cuts. What do you think is the most plausible scenario moving forward?
Well, I think that municipal or state debt bankruptcy is out of the question. People take these debts and borrow this, loan this money to municipalities and to states with the absolute certainty that it is a safe risk environment and that they're going to be paid back. To allow governments to bankrupt and get rid of those debts is improper and creates tremendous uncertainty within the financial markets, and has a great impact just on regular people. A lot of senior citizens who are retired buy these municipal bonds under the certainty that they're going to draw the interest and be paid back. I just don't think that's an option. Therefore, you're left with nothing else other than renegotiating some of these tremendous obligations that have been built up over the years. But Nicole, the truth is, not just in the United States, but worldwide, but especially in the United States, for many decades now, been overcommitting. And you have to, at some point, pay the piper, and that's now. So we have to make these adjustments. And public unions have a tremendous leverage that really private unions don't have. police, fire, or rescue do work stoppages or slowdowns or even allowed to strike, and that doesn't typically happen here, but if that kind of leverage is there, then they have a bigger advantage over the public than a private company does over its shareholders. So that's why,
well,
for example, in my state, Virginia, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, sir. Just, you know, even in your state of Virginia that, you know, is dealing with biennial budget, there is not a lot of structure in place to renegotiate with some of the bondholders, to bring the unions back to the table. So if you dismiss the idea of bankruptcy, which many governors across the country that I've spoken to actually do, it seems like the other option is a bailout. And you're sitting there in Washington, $1 trillion bailout. You know this better than anybody else. It's certainly something the United States cannot afford.
That's right. I don't think that bailouts are a good idea. I think that we come now to the heart of the matter. And the heart of the matter is that governors and in the United States level, the federal budget most particularly, we have to now begin to do the tough decisions, make the tough choices that are necessary to balance the budgets, or at least reduce the debt. Now, we at Free Congress have been very concerned about this. We've seen it coming for a long time. And we have proposed that there be some structures put into place for the political system to adjust to this. We propose that there be a joint committee of Republicans and Democrats, people in both houses of our legislatures, to get together and begin to talk about what we have to do to actually meet our obligations and reduce spending. This is very difficult to do. It's very painful politically. But I think maybe at this point in 2011, we've arrived at that point where this is what we must do.